Fall is here and class is back in session. And with an all-new school year comes an all-new season of our podcast, Campus Killings. I'm Dr. Megan Sachs.
And I'm Dr. Amy Sloshberg, and we're the hosts of Campus Killings.
In Season 1, we brought you 20 episodes covering some of the most sinister crimes to take place on or around school campuses, or the cases we discussed had a school-connected theme. From the recent high-profile cases like the November 2022 Moscow, Idaho murders of 4 students,
to older cases like the 1966 murder of Sherry Jo Bates in Riverside, California, a case with possible ties to the infamous Zodiac killer.
We also touched on cases that played a role in changing campus laws in order to better protect students.
In Season 2 of Campus Killings, which debuts on September 16th, 2023, we'll dive into an all-new set of campus-related murder cases.
And as usual, we'll include our analysis of each case as both educators and criminologists.
We hope you'll check out Season 2 of Campus Killings. And don't worry, if you haven't listened to Season 1 yet, all of our episodes are available to binge right now wherever you listen to podcasts.
You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Scene of the Crime, Zodiac Speaking,
Beyond Bizarre True Crime,
Citizen Detective,
and Campus Killings.
All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of The Murder in My Family. I'm your host, Mike Morford. In this episode, we'll be discussing the case of a man with physical difficulties who vanished from his Florida mobile home. When his sister arrived and looked around, she found troubling signs that he met with foul play. But as of today, he remains missing and presumed murdered. We'll dive into this case after some quick housekeeping. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a moment to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderMyFam or on Facebook at facebook.com/TMIMF podcast. If you'd like to support The Murder in My Family and get VIP access to things like ad-free listening, early preview episodes, and bonus content of not only this show, but for every other podcast on the AbJack network of indie podcasts, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcast. For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting the show in the process. Your support is greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note. Please support any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that this show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. This episode is going to be different from previous episodes of The Murder in My Family, because for the first time ever, this is going to be a bit of a crossover with another podcast I co-host with Jess Betancourt called Missing Persons. Rusty Meye was reported missing and vanished without a trace from his Vero Beach, Florida mobile home 3 years ago this week. Rusty's sister Roxanne traveled to Florida when she found out that he was missing. When she entered his home, she found a number of troubling things that police seemed to have missed, immediately leading her to believe that Rusty had met with foul play. Just recently at CrimeCon Orlando, I met Roxanne in person. She was there advocating for Rusty's case. Officially, Rusty was classified as a missing person for the last 3 years. But just recently, Roxanne found out that the status of Rusty's case has been changed from a missing persons case to a homicide case. Because of that fact, And because it was 3 years ago this week that Rusty was reported missing, we wanted to get the maximum amount of attention that we can on this case. So in this episode of The Murder of My Family, which airs October 14, 2023, I'll be providing a light introduction to the case and portions of the interview I did with Rusty's sister Roxanne. And in the next episode of Missing Persons, which airs a week later on October 21st, we'll fill in more blanks with a complete backstory of the case and the full interview with Roxanne. Our hope is that with this coverage of Rusty's case being spread out over 2 podcasts on the week of the 3-year anniversary of Rusty being reported missing, that it will result in more people finding out about this case and hopefully coming forward with information that may solve this case once and for all. I hope that next weekend you'll also tune in for the Missing Persons episode about Rusty's case. Rusty was born in Davenport, Iowa to parents Glenda and Eugene Meye. He had 2 older brothers and a sister Roxanne, who is my guest in this episode. Growing up, Rusty's family took in over 50 foster children. Many of them were special needs kids with a variety of ages and ethnicities. Oftentimes, there would be 10 kids in the family. Rusty attended high school in Davenport, but dropped out before graduating. When Rusty was around 19 or 20, he was looking for a change and headed to Colorado. While there, he met a good friend named Mike. Rusty accompanied Mike on a trip to Vero Beach, Florida to visit Mike's family. And while there, Rusty met a woman named Sue, and the 2 hit it off. And soon Rusty was in love and decided to move there. Rusty and Sue married in 1993. Rusty worked at a country club golf course called John's Island in Vero Beach, Florida. He was in charge of the maintenance of the golf course. He worked there for more than 15 years until he was injured. He loved that job and was really proud of the work that he did there. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina was heading towards Florida, the initial thought was that it was going to hit dead-on in Vero Beach, but it ended up passing over Florida and going out to the Gulf of Mexico. And while Hurricane Katrina didn't hit dead-on in Vero Beach, it did cause severe storms with strong winds and heavy rains. Many people left Vero Beach in presumption that Katrina was going to hit them head-on, but Rusty remained there and helped people batten down the hatches around their homes and get ready for the storm. And while he was helping someone protect their personal property outside of their home, a PVC pipe went through his foot. He wound up with infections requiring surgery. The injury caused severe nerve damage, which turned into a disorder called the CRPS, which is a progressive disorder that gradually moved up his leg. This disorder caused terrible, debilitating nerve pain, which caused Rusty to have difficulty walking. He was unable to perform his job at John's Island Country Club and had to go on disability. Rusty had always been a hard worker and didn't do well with the fact he wasn't able to work. He lost his identity of himself when he became disabled. On top of this, it was also reported that Rusty was injured in a motorcycle accident. Rusty fell into depression and grief. He would tell friends and family that he no longer felt like a man. His depression and use of pain meds caused his personality to change. And his struggles with depression brought a lot of stress into his marriage, and he and his wife Susan chose to divorce in 2012. Following his injuries and divorce, Rusty battled depression and was drinking heavily for several years. He was then picked up for drinking and driving in January 2019. After that, he vowed not to drink anymore. He also wanted to quit using many of the pain medications that he was on for his nerve pain resulting from his foot injury. He told loved ones that he didn't like the way the medications made him feel, and his thought process was cloudy. He said he wanted to have a clear head and eventually move back to Iowa once he took care of his DUI obligations. Part of those obligations involved him being tested for alcohol use monthly. Rusty told his sister Roxanne that he kept a single half-empty bottle of Wild Turkey whiskey in his trailer, and that every day he would look at that bottle to remind himself to never drink again. He was also working with his pain doctor to have other alternatives to control his pain. After Rusty's disappearance, when Roxanne cleaned out his trailer, she found that half-empty bottle of Wild Turkey whiskey. It was covered in dust, and more than 150 leftover pain meds were left in their medication bottles from over the previous year. Roxanne cried when she found those things, because she knew that Rusty was really working hard to be the best person he could and think clearly. He wanted a positive change and was on his way. Roxanne was proud of him, but she'd never get the chance to tell him that. In 2020, Rusty Lee Meye was living alone in his mobile home on a tree farm in Vero Beach, Florida, located in Indian River County. The trailer was described by Rusty's family as run down or dilapidated, and it was overrun with rats. His family pleaded with Rusty to move, to go anywhere but there, but he stayed. Rusty told his family about problems he was having with his landlord, Jerry, and how terribly Jerry was treating him. Jerry reportedly wanted Rusty gone, but with next to no money, Rusty couldn't afford to go anyplace, and was past due on his rent. This all was going on during the height of COVID, so it's unclear if Jerry didn't evict Rusty due to regulations surrounding COVID. But whatever the case, Rusty remained there, and things between him and Jerry got more tense. Rusty's family was worried about the problems he was having, but he was all alone down in Florida, so they couldn't help much. In one phone call Rusty had with his brother Ricky, he told him how bad he was treated by Jerry, and when Jerry showed up, Rusty sat the phone down so that his brother could hear the conversation with Jerry, and just how bad Jerry treated him and talked down to him. Jerry reportedly even told Rusty that he was going to burn the trailer with him in it. Rusty told his family that Jerry would come into his trailer and go through his stuff when Rusty wasn't home. Things were clearly not good for Rusty. Then, in October 2020, Rusty seemingly vanished without a trace. On Saturday, October 17th at 5:03 p.m., Jerry, the landlord, reported Rusty missing to the Indian River County Sheriff's Office. Jerry told the deputy that he hadn't seen or heard from Rusty since October 11th at around 4 p.m. in the afternoon. Police contacted Rusty's brother Ricky, who told them that he had last spoken to Rusty on October 3rd, and in that conversation, Rusty asked Ricky if he could loan him some money for rent and groceries. Jerry had found Rusty's phone in the trailer and turned it over to police, who searched it and found that there were no outgoing calls after the 11th. When police searched Rusty's trailer, they found most of his personal belongings, including his wallet and keys. Outside, his 3 cars were parked where they always were. The only thing that seemed to be missing was Rusty himself. Rusty's sister Roxanne made arrangements to come to Florida to look through Rusty's stuff alongside a missing persons advocate. She was surprised that the trailer wasn't sealed as a potential crime scene. When she entered the trailer, she was escorted by Jerry. It was then that Roxanne was horrified to find blood. She didn't say anything to Jerry at the time, but reported it to police, who had apparently missed it during their search. Roxanne began to feel that the detective in charge of the case had mishandled it. The failure to seal off the trailer, the missed blood, all of it in her mind was a sign that her brother Rusty had met with foul play. Eventually, the trailer was removed from the property, and as Roxanne understands it, Jerry reportedly had sold it to someone overseas, but it's not clear what really happened to it. Searches of the area and property around Rusty's trailer turned up empty. For 3 years, Roxanne has wondered what happened to her brother. She took up the cause to advocate for his case, and she was happy to see a new detective take over the case with fresh eyes. While she had presumed he was simply listed as a missing person, Roxanne recently found out that his case is being investigated as a homicide. Rusty was 59 years old when he vanished. He stood 5'9" and weighed 180 pounds, and wore glasses. He has brown hair and brown eyes, and walks with a limp. He has a tattoo of a lion on his upper right arm, and a tattoo of an eagle with an American flag on his upper back. If you have any information about Rusty Lee Meye, please call the Indian River County Sheriff's Office at 772-569-6700. I sat down with Rusty's sister Roxanne to discuss her brother's case, and as I mentioned earlier, you'll hear a portion of that interview here in this episode. To hear the interview in its entirety and learn additional details about this case, be sure to check out the next episode of my podcast, Missing Persons, which airs October 21st, 2023. My conversation with Roxanne is coming up in just a moment. Hey listeners, have you heard of Mr. Ballin? He's a former U.S. Navy SEAL who started telling strange but true tales on YouTube back in 2020, and now has a podcast that gets millions of downloads a month. It's called Mr. Ballin Podcast, Strange, Dark, and Mysterious Stories. The world has changed a lot since Mr. Ballin began his storytelling adventure, but one thing that hasn't is the hold that the strange, dark, and mysterious stories have over us. And that's exactly what Mr. Ballin delivers on his podcast. Each week, he walks listeners just like yourself through a real-life story, a living nightmare ripped from the archives. Listen to the Amazon-exclusive Mr. Ballin Podcast, Strange, Dark, and Mysterious Stories in the Amazon Music app. Download the app today. And I want to thank you for coming on to discuss your brother Rusty's case with us.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me, and thank you for doing this and putting it out there for everyone else to be able to hear and know what happened to him prior to him missing.
Yeah, and we definitely want to help get the word out. You and I met at CrimeCon recently. You were there trying to get the word out about Rusty's case. It's clear that you're desperate to find out what happened to him. Since he went missing, since this all happened, how tough have these last few years been without having any kind of answers?
It's been very tough. I feel like sometimes I'm fighting against a battle that is not going to be won. And, there's several family members that are just, their health is going down. Some have passed away, and we never did know what happened to him. So it's been very difficult, to say the least.
Well, we're going to dive into the clues, the details surrounding Rusty's case. But before we do that, can you tell listeners a little bit about Rusty himself and about his background and what was going on in his life when he went missing?
Sure. Rusty was a 59-year-old physically disabled man. He had been injured in an accident. His foot had been injured in Hurricane Katrina. He had a PVC pipe be thrown through his foot. So he had some nerve damage in that foot, which continued to get worse over the years. And he became physically disabled, having a difficult time being able to walk. He walked with a cane and had to wear shoes, special type of inserts or whatever shoes for support of his feet and able to walk. He also, from what I understand from his physician, that he could not do stairs and he could not walk long distances at all. In regards to Rusty himself, Rusty was living in a trailer on a tree farm and had been there since April of 2018. Because he was disabled, he was receiving disability checks, which did not amount to much. But it was enough for him to get by with financially up until COVID happened. When COVID happened, things got harder and rougher for Rusty because I guess prior to COVID, he was making a few extra dollars buying and selling things, trying to make additional money to get by beyond his disability check income. When COVID happened, of course, he didn't have that extra income. And that year he was struggling financially, but he was still remaining at the trailer. He had difficulty paying his rent and making his, getting his bills covered. And but he, was trying to make it the best he could. And overall, for Rusty as a person, he was a very proud man. He didn't like to be in the position that he was in. He was always a helpful person, from what I understand from the neighbors there who I've met. They said that he would always offer his assistance, whatever it could be for them. Even though he couldn't walk very well, he would still offer his help in any way. There was an elderly couple that lived right behind his trailer on the next property over, and apparently they talked at the fence line every day. And he was an older man and very nice gentleman, and he said that he missed Rusty something terrible because they seen him out there every day and would just talk at the fence line, and Rusty would help them in any way that he could. And Rusty was just the type of person, over the years, he would do things for anybody. I heard when I went down there looking for him, and checking around different, I don't know, establishments, whether it's a gas station or it was a storage facility unit. I mean, everybody told me the same thing. Rusty was always helpful. He would help anybody. He'd give his shirt off of his back. He was known to buy those storage, like buy auctioned off storage units. And then he would if there were any toys or anything like that, he would fix anything that needed fixing, and then he would donate them for children. Especially, he liked to fix up bikes, and he would give them to kids once they were fixed, because he always wanted children but was unable to have children. He was a divorced man. He had been married before, and they divorced back in 2012. So he'd been single for quite many years, quite a few years. And I don't know, Rusty was just, he always wanted to help others. He was put everybody else in front of himself. So I don't know if that explains who Rusty was well enough, other than he was just a good guy. And yeah.
It sounds though as if, despite having these physical issues that he was facing, that he still tried to be active and did certain things when he could, and up until COVID. It sounds like that sort of, was a downtime for everybody, but it sounds like it especially was hard, including financially, for Rusty.
Correct. And if you think about during COVID, everybody was staying home. So in the instance when Rusty did go missing, a lot of people didn't even realize he was missing because people weren't going out at that point in time. Most companies and restaurants, gas stations, stores, the post office, where I found and talked to people, and they said that they didn't even know Rusty had been missing because, people they weren't seeing people on a regular daily basis anymore since COVID had happened, and people were staying home in fear of catching the virus. So, yes.
The area that the trailer was on, was this a secluded piece of land, or was it, was there a lot of people around? Was there a lot of different homes? You mentioned having an elderly couple behind him that talked to him. How spread out were the trailers or the different houses there?
Well, it was a privately owned property. It had one house on it with a barn and another like shed-like structure. When I say barn, it was kind of like a pole barn. And what it was a tree farm. It was almost 10 acres. It was called Sylvester's Tree Farm. And there were multiple trailers, and sometimes also, I guess you would call them RVs, like were spaced here and there on this tree farm. There was a trailer literally right in the middle of the tree farm tree lot, like field, which was kind of odd. But anyway, it was an older man that lived there. And then there were just trailers that kind of were sitting around the lot. How many people were there? I can't tell you exactly. I can count. I'm thinking 4 other people that I know that resided on the tree farm land, and then also the actual owner that lived in the house that was on the property.
And so your brother didn't have anybody that was a roommate or lived there with him. He was on his own there.
That is correct. He lived in the closest trailer, closest to the main house that was on that property.
Okay. And I'm curious, how did he get around if he needed to run errands, if he had to go to the store or whatever he might have to do? Did he have someone that he relied on for transportation, or what was that situation?
Rusty had 3 vehicles. He had a van that sat he literally parked it about 15 feet from his trailer door. He also had a motorcycle that sat under the carport in front of the main house. And then he also had a pickup truck that sat out by the pole barn. And they all started. They were all full of gas. All the keys to each one of those vehicles were all hanging on side of hooks right inside of his door.
Okay. So coming and going, he didn't have any problems driving because of the physical challenges he was facing. He could still get himself out if he needed to.
Correct. The injury that happened to his foot was on his left foot, so he could drive.
Okay.
He could still walk, but he needed to wear shoes or boots for support to be able to keep the stability, from what I understand from his physician.
So let's go back to when he goes missing. Saturday, October 17th, 2020 is when there's a call made to the Indian River County Sheriff's Department to report a missing persons case. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that call happened and what was initially reported?
Yes. It wasn't actually the family that called on that day. The last time we were fully aware that someone had talked to or heard from Rusty was on October 5th. On Monday, October 5th. Rusty had called and left a message on a family friend's phone. So we do have that message. And at that time, he did not sound like there was anything wrong. Anything was out of the ordinary. On October 6th is my birthday, and Rusty had called me every year for the last 40, I think I counted 46 years since we had lived together, and he had never missed a birthday. And he did not call me. It didn't affect me. I recognized it, but it didn't bother me and didn't think too much of it until our mom called on October 8th. She called me and asked if I had heard from Rusty. And I said no. And she said, that's funny because I haven't heard from him all week. And he was very consistent on calling her several times a week. And he would talk to her anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and a half each time. And she hadn't heard from him. So she was worried. And I tried to assure her that he was probably just lost track of time or lost track of days, and he was busy, and she was sure that he was fine. But she was very concerned because she knew that he had been having money problems, and he had also had problems being not getting along with his landlord. So and had been threatened by his landlord a couple times. So she was worried about that. But anyway, I assured her that he would call her. I still didn't think anything was wrong at that point in time. As the next week went on, and then I heard back again from my mom on the 15th. It was October 15th, Thursday. And I told her, I said, Mom, if you're really concerned, give him a call. And she said she would. And honestly, I never thought anything more about it until I received a call Saturday. And that was my brother, Rick, from Texas, who said that he had received a call from a deputy asking if he knew where Rusty was, because someone had called in the Indian River County Sheriff's Department asking for a well check on Rusty, saying that he hadn't been seen in a while. And from what I understand, the landlord that is there by the name of Derry, he made a call to the Indian River County Sheriff's Department asking for the well check because he claimed that he had not seen Rusty since some time around, and he couldn't be exact as from what I understand, but he thought it was since probably the 11th of October. So
this is pretty alarming. I'm assuming at this point, that's when I would think that you did become, alarmed that something was going on.
Correct. I mean, then we were very concerned because Rusty had told us that he had been threatened and that there were people living around and near his trailer and on the property for the tree farm that had threatened him, stolen his belongings. His electricity and water had been turned off, even though he was still living there because he couldn't pay rent. So anyway, it became very alarming. Unfortunately, Rusty insisted on remaining living there because he didn't want to leave Florida, and he had been trying to find another place to live. I had found multiple printed out pieces of paper that he had printed out for other locations he was trying to find to be able to move to, like other houses or rooms or apartments. And I did call those places that he had printed out and asked if he had called them to see if about renting their apartment or house. And some of them said yes, and some of them said, so many people have called them that they couldn't identify if it was Rusty who had called them or not. But so I know he was looking for another place to live because it wasn't safe there, but he just couldn't afford a lot. And we were just, we were at a loss. So when the deputy first arrived at his trailer, they found his cell phone, his main cell phone, plugged in and charging. And that's all they told me. I live in Tennessee, and that's all they told me they found plugged in and charging. But and they said all of his cars were there. They didn't tell me about anything else. But they said all of his cars were there. The keys were in the trailer, and his phone was plugged in and charging, but Rusty was missing. That's all they told me whenever they called me and told me that he was missing and, looking for him. But from what I understand, that deputy then called in a detective, and I did talk to the detective as well, and he didn't tell me any more information than that. It wasn't until I got down there, I wasn't able to get down there until the 30th of October. So that was 13 days after the well check. And because Rusty had told me that he was afraid and threatened by one or some of the people on the tree farm, I didn't want to go alone. So I found somebody in that area that my ex-sister-in-law knew that would be able to go with me, so I wasn't alone. When we went there, one of the first things we noticed when we opened up the trailer door was there was blood on the inside of the trailer door. I was not informed of that by the detective, so I didn't go in to the trailer. I just kind of looked in and looked around, and honestly, it smelled really bad, really bad. You could smell something that was dead on the inside. So I called the detective, and the landlord was showing us around. So I didn't feel comfortable with him, so I couldn't call or take pictures, call the detective immediately or take pictures. I didn't even want to acknowledge the fact that we seen the blood immediately on the inside of the door, because I didn't want the landlord to become aware that I was seeing things that maybe he didn't want me to see, or didn't recognize, I guess. I don't know.
Just a sort of a protective mode. You just want
Correct.
to act like I don't see what I really see here.
Exactly.
So I can talk about it later
Um,
on, but I'm not going to say anything right now.
Correct. Thank you. We did grab all the keys to the vehicles. We started the van that was right next door, or like right next to the trailer front door, and it started immediately. Went over and started his motorcycle. I didn't, but the guy that came to the farm with me did, because I wouldn't know how to start a motorcycle. And it started right up as well. Anyway, so we had all the keys. We did find that his trailer was left unlocked. And I asked the landlord, why is this trailer unlocked? And he said, because I knew Rusty would never leave it unlocked. He had said that things had been stolen, and he would have to hide things to keep people from taking things. And he said that he knew that his landlord was coming into his trailer, even though it was locked, whenever he would leave, and go to the store or to go to the post office or whatever to get his mail. So I knew Rusty wouldn't leave it locked. It just gave me a horrible, horrible feeling that something did not go right here, especially when I seen the blood initially on the inside of the door. I did not see, after I left the trailer, when I first went there on the 30th, I then met the detective in person that was on the case. I met him in person immediately after I went to the tree farm. At that time, he told me to connect with a advocate group, which were amazing for me. They were called Pink Justice at the time, and now they've changed their name and they're called Seeking Justice. The detective told me to reach out to them and talk to them, and they would help me with Rusty's belongings, and that he trusted that if there was anything that was found in the trailer that was evidence of, or would give him any information to the whereabouts of Rusty or what happened to him, they would know what to do with it or how to progress from there. And that he did not want to go back to the tree farm because he didn't want to make anybody on the tree farm think that he was still investigating it as a possible, that it could be possibly a crime and not just a missing person case.
And I'm curious, did they initially see the blood themselves, or did you have to tell them about the blood that you found for them to find out about it?
I had to tell them. But 2 weeks before that, I can tell you that Rusty was talking to my brother Rick on the phone, and Rick said that, and Rusty had told all of this as well. He said that Rusty had been complaining again that during the day his landlord was easier to talk to, was more civil, would talk to him in a nice manner, but at nighttime after, his landlord would start drinking, and I guess there was also drugs involved that the landlord was involved in, that he became mean and would threaten him. And Rusty was talking to our brother Rick, and Rusty said, "Oh no, here he comes again." And I guess it was in the evening time. So Rusty assumed that Jerry had been drinking. And Rusty said, "Rick, I'm just going to put the phone down so that you can listen to how he talks to me." So apparently Rusty put the phone down without Jerry knowing that Rick was still on the phone listening to how Jerry talked to Rusty. And Jerry threatened Rusty and said if he didn't get his effing ass out of here, because he wanted Rusty to move, that he was going to haul the trailer out to the middle of the tree field and torch it with him in it. And Rick heard all that. He did tell the detective that, and that was about 2 weeks before Rusty disappeared.
So you've got the landlord here. There's some friction between him and Rusty. There's a threat here that's, he wants him out and something might happen. And then your brother goes missing and there's blood at the scene. So, it seems logical that this person, this landlord, would be someone that the police would be interested in talking to. I'm curious, how cooperative was he, and what did they talk about? What did the police ask him, and what he said?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So from what best I can tell you, I wasn't there during that conversation. It was before I arrived down to Florida on the 30th of October. What the detective that was on the case then, he was relieved from that case about 6 months after Rusty disappeared. But the detective that was on the case said that he did question the landlord, but that detective thought that the landlord was just a normal businessman. When I asked the detective what his gut feeling was about the landlord. He told me, oh, he's just a business guy. He kind of looks like a beach bum or a surfer dude with long hair and walks around just in casual clothes and sells trees. And I said, but what about his history? And he said, what history? And I said, well, he's on probation for 2.5 years. And he had no idea he had a criminal background. And anyway, the detective had no idea at that point in time. And that was before I went down to Florida. I could Google all that just by, looking online. So the detective didn't think there was anything suspicious at all about this tree farm. Now, having said that, Mike, in addition to that, I had the CAD list pulled, which is the phone 911 call list to that residency, finding out if there was any history with that residence. And there were 27 911 calls to that address in the previous 10 years. Everything listing from crimes that were theft, drugs, prostitution. There was a death in October of 2015 in the very trailer Rusty was living in. They found a man's body that was already starting to decay. And I talked to at that time, he was a deputy, but he was the sergeant of my detective by the time that Rusty just disappeared. And I talked to him about that. He actually said that trailer was a very old trailer and nobody should been living in it even after 2015, let alone by the time Rusty rented it in 2018. So anyway, the fact that there was 27 911 calls to that residence in the last 10 years when Rusty went missing, why there wouldn't have been a bright red flag going up thinking this could be a case of more than just a missing person is beyond me. He had us go ahead and go into the trailer and go through it. We found Rusty's on that day, October 31st. Now, this is a week after, or be a total of 2 weeks after the initial well check call. And again, the trailer was unlocked during that entire time. From what I understand, the detective that responded to the case on the 17th did not lock the trailer. So it was left unlocked for 2 weeks until I got there. And when we went in, we didn't only find blood on the door, but we found, and the trailer, by the way, looked like it had just been torn apart. There was stuff all over the bed. There was stuff everywhere. The kind of, I guess it's called like a day bed that would make into a table setup kind of thing in a trailer aspect. That was a disaster. There was just stuff everywhere. So if the detectives, when they first went to Rusty's trailer, couldn't see the blood because one, it was dark in there. Because when we went in, we just took the cardboard out of the windows to give us some light to see. Because again, there was no electricity in there. It smelled awful because of the dead decaying. We found 2 rats that were dead and decaying in there. And that's what we were smelling. But we also found additional blood on the wood paneling that was inside of this trailer. We found smears, drops on the ceiling, which I didn't understand. I'm a nurse, but it didn't look like arterial spray. It just looked like 3 drops on the ceiling. Well, how does blood get on the ceiling? And I learned more about that at CrimeCon, by the way, at the blood splatter class. So it made more sense after that. But in addition to the additional blood that we found, we also found Rusty's wallet that had his license, all of his credit cards, had $121 or $123, I don't remember now, of cash. But it had all of his identification and, again, who leaves with that? The detective initially had told me, oh, he killed himself, or because he was low on money and having difficulties, and maybe he was depressed. And it's like, okay, well, if he killed himself, where's his body? He didn't kill himself. His body would have been found.
There's a lot of different things here that don't make sense. All this stuff that Rusty would use or want or wouldn't just leave behind if he did go someplace is all there. Everything's there except for Rusty, but what is there is also blood, which could be a sign of a crime scene. And then to make matters worse, the trailer isn't closed off like as a potential crime scene. It's sort of unlocked for anyone that wants to go in there. A lot of problems here, and I just want to sort of flash forward here, and I think this could be a frustrating part, but where is the trailer now?
Unfortunately, even though I begged and begged for the blood to be tested, the blood was never tested. I was told that that wasn't enough blood to be a gruesome murder. That's what the detective said. And I was also told that because the trailer was left unlocked for 2 weeks, prior to me getting there, that anybody could have been walking into the trailer and would have jeopardized any type of evidence that might have been submissible in court. So the detective would not come back to the trailer to do anything. So the trailer was allowed to be supposedly sold by the landlord. The landlord told me that it was sold to somebody in the Bahamas and it was taken away. That was around the 12th, or between the 12th and the 15th of November. So I wound up being down there for almost a month looking for my brother and getting to know the area and talking to everybody that I could talk to and run into around the community down there to find out what happened to my brother. And I believe it was on November 12th, the landlord called me and said I had to get Rusty's vehicles off of that property because he was going to move the trailer and his van was in the way. And it was taken away. It's my presume feeling that it was torched because no one would live in it. Not only was there no electricity in it because he turned off the electricity at some point, although the phones were plugged in and charging. I don't know if the wall electricity worked, but not the ceiling. There were so many rats in that trailer that they had chewed up all the wiring. Who's going to buy a trailer and then haul it to the Bahamas? That doesn't make any sense. It wasn't worth anything. The sergeant at Indian River County Sheriff's Department told me that it should have been destroyed back in 2015 when he arrived on the scene of a dead man that was in it in October of 15. Who's going to buy a trailer and haul it to the Bahamas?
Yeah, it sounds kind of fishy.
Yeah, no doubt.
And then this is a potential crime scene that's not only not sealed off, but then it's allowed to be taken away, and who knows what happened to it. So now the potential crime scene, the last place that has clues, is gone.
Since this whole 6 months occurred with Rusty's disappearance and a new detective came on, it took us over a year, but we finally got a warrant to do a search of the property because we were received a tip that we had to look at the burn piles. So, and the detective said it was a, significant, reputable tip. We did get a warrant by the Florida state's attorney, but only to look at the burn piles, and the dogs hit on the burn piles. And anyway, they searched, I guess, what was left of the burn piles and did not find it. Now that search did not occur until May of 2020. Let me think, 2022. So we're just kind of stuck. We're looking for anybody that might have any idea of what happened to Rusty or any they could help add to that time frame of anybody that lived on the property. Anything. We're just at a loss because we have nothing left to go on.
I do want to jump forward to where the Indian River County Police Department made a brief video about the case, and they put it out. And in that video, they say that they're of the opinion that foul play may have occurred. But what do you think led to them finally coming to that conclusion after all this time?
Well, it was a new detective on the case. The detective they brought into the case was a detective that had a history and experience working with homicides. And when he came onto the case 6 months after Rusty disappeared, after the first detective was on the case, his opinion of the case and how it should have been handled was different than the first detective. And he was looking at it from a different perspective. He was looking at it a perspective, if Rusty was a disabled man and could not walk far, couldn't, climb stairs, had every access to go get in his car and leave if he wanted to leave. Or in addition, if he wanted to kill himself, then he had plenty of medications, pain medications, other medications he could have just taken and overdosed himself and just never woke up. Rusty also had a carry license. He had a gun, which, by the way, when Pink Justice and I went through the trailer on Saturday, Saturday, October 30th, we did not find the gun in that trailer. On Monday, November 2nd, when a Pink Justice woman and I literally cleaned out the trailer to be able to take anything that I wanted to bring home and keep it safe, we found a gun just barely underneath the top layer of like a throw blanket on his bed. We're pretty darn sure it was not there on Saturday, 2 days before. How it arrived back in there, if that's what happened, we don't know. But I also told the detective at that time too, immediately. And every time we found something that was pertinent at that time, whether it was the additional blood that we found when we took the cardboard off the windows and made it more bright in the trailer, or when we found his dependent medications, or when we found his wallet with all of his identifications and his money and credit cards in there. Every time we found a new piece of evidence that Rusty did not leave that trailer on his own, we called the detective, and we were continued to be told to proceed, continue to proceed. That's not enough. I need more. He needed more information than that. That it should be more of a criminal case rather than a missing person case. I think because just the actual gut feeling and the evidence that was in and shared in the report, I guess I've never seen the report, but in whatever report that the current detective on the case had. And then also, again, he also wound up receiving a lead about checking out the burn piles. Well, why would you check out the burn piles unless there was a body burned in it? With, a year and a half later. So he did do a video for the 1 year anniversary of Rusty missing, standing outside of the property of Sylvester's Tree Farms, asking for the help from the public if they knew anything. And yes, he did say they believe that there was foul play involved. And today, Rusty is listed on the cold case list of people from Indian River County area as a unresolved homicide.
That obviously shifts the case from missing persons case to possible homicide.
Correct.
And unfortunately now, the trailer, unless it's out there someplace and hasn't been destroyed, that may hold some of the clues, may be lost and may not be able to have clues or evidence retrieved from it, which is very, very disheartening. So we started out this discussion mentioning that you and I met at CrimeCon. You were there hoping to, I guess, learn what you could, maybe spread the word about the case. And I'm curious if going to CrimeCon did help you in any way with what your plans are for Rusty's case and how to actively, investigate it or get the word out there. What did you learn at CrimeCon, and what context did you make to help you in your quest?
Well, it was an amazing opportunity to go, and I will be going next year, which will be right here in Nashville, Tennessee. I live in Franklin, Tennessee. I met so many people, not only people that might be of help to Rusty's case, such as retired detectives that were interested. Mike, I had people looking for me when they heard about Rusty's case. That turned out to be on 2 occasions during those 3 days of the conferences, people coming, looking for me, asking, is your name Roxanne? And I would say yes. And of course, and what can I do for you? And they introduced themselves as retired detectives. They were reading up on Rusty's case. They wanted to know more information and they would like to be helpful. So we'll see what happens and what they could help identify, and if the current detectives and people, law enforcement in Indian River County, will be willing to give them information to be able to help. I believe more heads working together might be able to solve this. The more we get it out there in the public, more people will know and maybe come forward. Now that it's a cold case, not completely cold, but listed on the cold case in Indian River County, there is a Crime Stoppers reward of $5,000 that could be obtained by somebody giving information that may lead to the arrest of who is responsible, which is awesome. In addition to meeting detectives at CrimeCon, I also met a lot of advocates, and I also met other people that are in the same boat as I am, which is really sad. It's a part of a group that no one wants to be part of. But meeting other people and hearing what they've gone through and dealt with was very helpful from a therapeutic sense, if you can call that, especially with the not finding any remains of Rusty at this point in time. And by the way, we believe that he's deceased. I mean, nothing's been touched in his account, his money, his bank account, his social security number hasn't been used. Nothing has been done regarding him. So people use the word of closure when you have a missing person or a missing loved one. I don't know if closure is the right word to call it, but we would like to know, and at bare minimum, have some of his remains, even if we never find out who was responsible, having his remains. I know my mother would like to have him buried with her when she passes away, just to make her feel that, he's not alone like he has been since, he disappeared. So, CrimeCon was awesome. I look forward to next year. I hope that we find out what happened to Rusty before then, but I definitely look forward to next.
And absolutely, we want to help you spread the word and get it out there that his case is still unresolved. And along those lines, do you have any social media pages for his case, or any websites or anything like that where people can learn more about it or share it on social media, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there is a Facebook page that was initially started by Pink Justice, and it is called Finding Rusty Meye by Pink Justice. And it's a group that you can join, and then I'm one of the moderators along with another probably 10 of us that are in it, and we'll let you in. We let everybody in. Again, the more people that is aware of it, the better. So that is there. And of course, if anybody knows anything or would like to share some information they might know about his disappearance, or anything about Sylvester's Tree Farm, or anybody that has to do with Sylvester's Tree Farm, please call the Indian River County Sheriff's Department, and please give that information to them, because it could be very beneficial, no matter how little you think it might be. It could be just the tip that they need to figure out the case. And the Indian River County Sheriff's Department number is 772-569-6700. Currently, the detective on the case is Phil Doherty. He'd be happy to hear from anybody who may have any tips that might help him on this case.
Well, we'll definitely share all those different links. People out there listening, hopefully if anyone knows anything, hears anything, they'll do the right thing and come forward and provide that information so your family can get answers. I want to thank you for coming on, Roxanne, to discuss Rusty's case, and hope that you do find out what happened, and hopefully by the next Crime Con, I'll see you there and you'll be able to tell me that there's been some progress in the case.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you for reaching out to me after meeting at CrimeCon. I really appreciate it. And yes, I look forward to meeting you again at next year's CrimeCon.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.